Donald Trump is no stranger to making headlines with his bold and often controversial economic decisions. In his latest maneuver, he's imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on nearly every Canadian import, igniting fears of a full-blown trade war that could ripple through North America. From rising prices on everyday goods to potential job losses and strained diplomatic ties, the economic consequences of these tariffs are vast. We're about to dive deep into every aspect of Trump's tariff takedown. Is it just political theater, or could this decision really cost billions in economic output? Stay tuned as we break it all down. In early February 2025, President Trump signed an executive order under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (IEEPA), citing an extraordinary national emergency caused by illegal immigration and the influx of contraband drugs, most notably fentanyl from Canada. According to Trump's justification, these tariffs are not only about protecting the border, but also about pressuring Canada to tighten its security measures. The order mandates a flat 25% tariff on virtually all Canadian imports, with no immediate exemptions, while even a 10% tariff is imposed on select energy products. Critics, however, argue that the economic rationale is flimsy. While Trump touts the tariffs as a method to make America rich, economists note that such measures often lead to higher consumer prices and disruptions in supply chains. Trump's move echoes his past tariff policies, controversial actions that some see as mere political theater designed to boost his domestic approval ratings. Analysts from Reuters and Politico have pointed out that the legal basis under IEEPA is being stretched to justify a tool traditionally reserved for trade imbalances or wartime conditions. Economists caution that using national emergency powers to impose such broad tariffs could be seen as a political bargaining chip rather than a measured economic policy. One expert notes, "Whether you agree with his reasoning or not, the trigger for these tariffs is clear: an aggressive attempt to reshape North American trade under the banner of national security." But what does this mean for the everyday American and for Canada? Let's take a closer look. The immediate consequence of a 25% tariff on Canadian goods is a sharp rise in prices. Industries ranging from automotive parts and lumber to energy products are expected to see steep cost increases. For instance, American refineries that depend on Canadian crude oil, supplying nearly 2/3 of Midwest oil production, could be forced to pay higher input costs, inevitably passing these costs on to consumers at the pump. Analysts at EY Parthenon estimate that these tariffs could reduce U.S. economic output by approximately 1.5% this year. Meanwhile, inflation is predicted to creep up by an extra 0.7 percentage points in the first quarter alone. These numbers aren't abstract, they translate into everyday consequences. Higher prices for electronics, apparel, and even groceries. A recent report by Business Insider suggests that American households might face a significant price shock in the months ahead, as importers, facing a 25% cost barrier, pass those costs on to consumers. Beyond the immediate price hikes, there's a ripple effect through supply chains. Small businesses, already grappling with tight margins, fear that higher input costs could force them to cut back on production or even lay off workers. A story from NPR detailed how small business owners in border towns are preemptively locking in warehouse contracts and seeking alternative suppliers to mitigate these risks. And it doesn't end there. If Canada and Mexico retaliate, as many expect, the ensuing trade war could further depress U.S. GDP and trigger job losses in both manufacturing and agriculture sectors. Tariffs are a double-edged sword. While they might generate short-term revenue, the long-term effect is a drag on economic growth and consumer purchasing power, an economist explains. In sum, while Trump's tariffs may be marketed as a way to protect American jobs, the evidence suggests that the backlash in terms of higher consumer prices and disrupted supply chains could cost billions and hurt the very economy they're meant to defend. Canada isn't standing idle. In response to Trump's unilateral 25% tariff imposition, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has vowed a forceful but reasonable counterattack. Canadian officials are mobilizing a series of retaliatory measures that include imposing tariffs on up to $110 billion worth of U.S. imports, targeting industries from agriculture and energy to manufactured goods. Trudeau's response is aimed not only at safeguarding Canadian economic interests, but also at preserving a long-standing trade relationship built over decades. Reports from The Guardian and Reuters indicate that Canada's countermeasures are designed to inflict equivalent economic pain on U.S. industries that rely heavily on Canadian exports. For instance, Ontario's auto industry, a key pillar of Canadian manufacturing, faces potential disruption if U.S. retaliatory tariffs force a reduction in cross-border trade. Provincial leaders like Ontario Premier Doug Ford have even warned that energy exports could be curtailed, a move that would send shockwaves through both economies. Industry groups and trade associations are already voicing concerns. Canadian business leaders fear that if a trade war escalates, it could upend decades of integration under the USMCA, a trade agreement that both nations have relied on for stability. Trudeau's government is also investing heavily in border security improvements, with a recent allocation of over $1.3 billion aimed at modernizing surveillance and response capabilities. This dual approach, retaliatory tariffs coupled with enhanced security measures, is intended to force the US to reconsider its aggressive posture while protecting Canada's economic sovereignty. Canada's message is clear. We will defend our trade and our people, but our response will be measured and targeted, says a trade policy expert from CBC News. Canada's countermeasures are not just about numbers. They're about maintaining a balanced relationship in a region that has long thrived on mutual economic benefit. With billions of dollars in trade at risk, the coming weeks will test the resilience of North American partnerships. The long-term ramifications of Trump's tariff policy extend far beyond immediate price hikes. This move has the potential to unravel decades of North American economic integration. The USMCA, a trade agreement that replaced NAFTA and was once hailed as a triumph of regional cooperation, is now under severe strain. If retaliatory tariffs escalate, the trade relationship could deteriorate into a protracted trade war with far-reaching effects on everything from manufacturing to agriculture. Economists warn that a full-blown tariff war could reduce US GDP by 2% or more over the next few years, as uncertainty forces businesses to delay investments and reconfigure supply chains. The potential ripple effects include a significant slowdown in global trade, disrupted production networks, and even a recession in certain sectors. In an era when the US has grown increasingly reliant on integrated supply chains, especially with close partners like Canada and Mexico, such disruptions could prove devastating. Furthermore, the political fallout could be just as severe. With bilateral trade valued at nearly $1 trillion, a sustained trade war would strain diplomatic ties and upend the stability that has underpinned North American trade for decades. Analysts from Reuters have suggested that this tariff tactic might even be used as leverage in renegotiating future trade deals, but at what cost? For US consumers, the end result could be a market with fewer choices and higher prices, a scenario that could ultimately hurt both sides of the border. As the economic interdependence between the US, Canada, and Mexico deepens, using tariffs as a political tool risks not only economic pain but also long-term damage to trust and cooperation, remarks an economist from Politico. Ultimately, Trump's tariff takedown is a high-stakes gamble. It aims to reshape trade dynamics and force political concessions, but the risk is enormous. If retaliatory measures take hold and the trade war escalates, both countries may find themselves paying a steep price in terms of lost growth, job cuts, and even diminished global influence. The next few months will be critical in determining whether diplomacy can prevail over protectionism. Trump's tariff takedown is more than just a headline. It's a critical juncture in North American trade relations. Will these tariffs force a renegotiation of the USMCA and lead to lasting reforms? Or will they spark a retaliatory trade war that costs billions and disrupts everyday life? We want to hear your thoughts on how this will shape the future of international trade. Thanks for watching Trump's Tariff Takedown. Stay tuned for our next deep dive into the high-stakes world of global trade and economics. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.